Welcome back to Notorious Figures in History. In this video, we give you 45 minutes of mafia history packed into tiny episodes for you to enjoy. Now, before we get started on this journey to the past, consider subscribing as a token of friendship before we begin our story.
Why did Vincent the Chin Gigante walk the streets in a bathrobe? The answer might shock you. Vincent Gigante, the infamous leader of the Genovese crime family, known for his bizarre act of feigning insanity. He roamed New York in a bathrobe, mumbling to himself, but behind the facade, a ruthless mastermind. From the 1960s to the 90s, he controlled the mafia with an iron fist. Discover more chilling stories of notorious figures in history.
If you don't know Johnny Torrio, you're missing the mastermind behind Al Capone. Let's dive in. Johnny Torrio was the brains behind Chicago's underworld. He transformed organized crime into a business empire, paving the way for the notorious Al Capone. Known as the Fox, Torrio's influence was as vast as it was sinister. Want more stories?
If you're a true crime fan, you need to hear about Fat Tony Salerno. This mob boss ruled with an iron fist. Anthony Fat Tony Salerno wasn't just a mobster. He was the feared boss of the Genovese crime family. From his base in Harlem, he controlled illegal gambling, loan sharking, and more. Despite his notorious reputation, he managed to avoid prison for decades. But in 1986, the law finally caught up with him. Convicted on RICO charges, Fat Tony was sentenced to 100 years in prison. He died behind bars, but his legend lives on.
Tommy Lucchese wasn't your average mobster. Born in 1899, he rose to power in New York City's criminal underworld. Known for his cunning mind, he ran the Lucchese crime family for over 2 decades. But it wasn't just his brains that set him apart. It was his loyalty, his ability to stay under the radar, and that infamous nickname, Three Finger Brown. Yes.
If your idea of mafia powerhouses includes only the old guard, think again. Alphonse Trucchio was the new wave in the Gambino family. Born into the infamous Gambino crime family, Alphonse Trucchio quickly climbed the ranks. By his early 20s, he was already a captain, a rare feat. Known for his sharp mind and ruthless tactics, Trucchio played a key role in the family's operations during the 2000s. From running illegal gambling rings to orchestrating massive fraud schemes, his impact was undeniable. But like many in the mob world, his rise came with a fall. Trucchio faced numerous indictments leading to his eventual imprisonment.
Joseph Massino, once the powerful head of the Bonanno crime family, broke the ultimate code of silence. Known as the Last Don, he was a feared figure in the world of organized crime. But in 2004, everything changed. Facing life in prison, Massino did the unthinkable. He turned informant. His testimony helped dismantle the very empire he once controlled. A legacy of power turned into a tale of betrayal. Curious to learn.
Why do some of the most notorious hitmen come from Brooklyn? Meet Anthony Center, one of the deadliest of them all. Anthony Center wasn't just any hitman, he was the stuff of nightmares. Known for his cold precision and ruthless efficiency, Center was a key member of the infamous DeMeo crew. His career in crime was marked by a staggering body count, and he quickly earned a fearsome reputation on the streets of Brooklyn. But what drove Center to such a deadly path? From his early days in organized crime to becoming one of the most feared hitmen, his story is a dark journey into the underbelly of New York's crime world.
Let's start with the dark story of the Philadelphia Mafia and its favorite son, Salvi Testa, a beloved hitman born in the alleys of Philadelphia and etched in its gritty underworld. A man of contradictions, both feared and revered, Salvi avenged his father Philip Testa's death by whacking many of his killers, but he was murdered on the orders of Nicky Scarfo in 1984. But what drove this elusive figure? Was it loyalty, power, or the echoes of a turbulent past? Testa's end came when he was gunned down by the orders of little Nicky Scarfo, a small but violent little man. Frankie Yale, the name that struck fear in Brooklyn during the 1920s, Yale rose from the gritty streets of New York to become one of the most feared mafia bosses. Known for his brutal enforcement tactics, Yale was Al Capone's mentor and the kingpin of Brooklyn's underworld. But power comes with enemies. In 1928, Yale met his dramatic end in a hail of bullets, marking the first time a Tommy gun was used in New York's history. His death. What I wish I knew before diving into the world of true crime. Tony Spilotro was more than just a mobster. Spilotro, known as the Ant, was the ruthless muscle behind the Chicago outfit. His reign of terror in Las Vegas during the 1970s and 80s was legendary. Fearless and cunning, Spilotro enforced mob rules with an iron fist, but his brutality didn't go unnoticed. He ran a notorious crew of thugs who terrorized Las Vegas with robberies and grisly crimes. The FBI was on his tail, leading to a dramatic downfall. Betrayals, backstabbing, and a brutal end. But who was the rat? Spilotro's life reads like a crime thriller. Forget what you've heard about the glitz of Las Vegas. Dive into its gritty origins with the enigmatic Bugsy Siegel, a man who gambled with more than just money. Born in the harsh streets of Brooklyn, Benjamin Bugsy Siegel was more than just a charming mobster. He was a visionary, albeit a deadly one. His dreams led him to the sparkling deserts of Nevada, where he planted the seeds of modern Las Vegas. But behind the glamour there was a world of deceit, betrayal, and violence. Siegel's life was a cinematic roller coaster, marked by infamous friendships, ruthless decisions, and a mysterious, brutal end. Was he a cold-blooded killer or a misunderstood entrepreneur? His legacy, like the neon lights of the Strip, refuses to fade into the dark, forever illuminating.
Why do 90% of Harlem's old-timers still talk about Bumpy Johnson? Here's why. Bumpy Johnson wasn't just any gangster. He was the kingpin who controlled Harlem's streets during the 1930s and 40s. Known for his sharp mind and ruthless tactics, Bumpy outsmarted rivals and built alliances with powerful figures like Lucky Luciano. But he wasn't just feared, he was also respected. Bumpy helped his community and fought against police brutality.
The name's Colosimo, James Big Jim Colosimo. And he was Chicago's kingpin of crime. Rising from a humble Italian immigrant, Big Jim built an empire on vice and corruption. He turned Chicago's South Side into a playground of illegal gambling, brothels, and protection rackets. A master manipulator, Colosimo bribed officials and outwitted rivals, becoming untouchable. But power breeds enemies. In 1920, a bullet silenced him forever, leaving a legacy of fear and fascination.
Welcome to Notorious Figures in History. What happens when a mafia boss refuses to bow to America's most feared gangsters? The answer would change organized crime forever. Known as the Peacemaker, Gaspare Milazzo was a major figure in Detroit's mafia during Prohibition. Born in Sicily, he built alliances from Brooklyn to Detroit, always trying to keep the peace. But after a rival's death, tensions exploded. Milazzo, trusting his reputation, attended a lunch to broker peace. Instead, he was ambushed and killed instantly. His assassination sparked a bloody mafia war and marked the beginning of the Castellano's conflict. Want more stories? Are you curious about the tough guys behind the mob? The real muscle? Let me introduce you to Dominic Sciallo, Brooklyn's very own enforcer. Sciallo, also known as Mimi or the King of Coney Island, was once a name that sent shivers down spines in Brooklyn's underworld. He worked in the shadows and wasn't afraid to break bones. His story is a mix of loyalty, power, and some really rough karma. In 1974, Dominic Sciallo's body was discovered in the basement of Otto's social and athletic club in Brooklyn. Sciallo, who managed the Colombo family's Coney Island operations, had been missing for 10 months. Sciallo was the backbone of how the mob worked.
Exposing the secrets of the notorious Joey Molino. Let's uncover the truth. Born into a mafia family, Skinny Joey climbed the ranks of the Philadelphia crime family. Known for his charisma and ruthless tactics, he ruled the streets with an iron fist. But what lies behind his public persona? From socialite to feared mob boss, Molino's life is a cocktail of power, betrayal, and crime. Curious to know more about notorious figures like Joey?
Think you know the world's most infamous drug lord? Think again. Joaquin El Chapo Guzman wasn't just a man, he was a myth. As the leader of the Sinaloa cartel, he orchestrated billion-dollar drug operations and escaped prison not once but twice. His empire reached far and wide, making him a legend in the underworld. But his reign of terror came to a dramatic end with his capture in 2016. From tunnels to shootouts, El Chapo's story is one of power, betrayal, and ultimate downfall. Let's uncover the life of Pablo Escobar. Pablo Escobar, the most notorious drug lord of the 20th century, built an empire on fear and cocaine. At his peak, he was making over $70 million a day. But did you know he also tried to run for political office? His reign of terror included bombings, assassinations, and even a self-built prison known as La Catedral. Yet to some in Colombia, he was a Robin Hood figure, giving back to the poor. How did one man become both a hero and a villain?
This is the story of Carmine Galante, the mafia's most ruthless boss. Born in 1910, Carmine Galante rose through the ranks of the mafia, leaving a trail of terror in his wake. Known as Lilo, or the Cigar, he was a mastermind behind the international heroin trade. His brutality was unmatched, his enemies numerous. But in 1979, his reign came to a bloody end. Assassinated while dining in Brooklyn, his death sent shockwaves through the criminal underworld.
Am I the only one that didn't know about Sonny Francese? He was the mob's silent enforcer. Sonny Francese, a name that sent chills down the spine of New York. Rising through the ranks of the Colombo crime family, he became infamous for his brutal efficiency. From silent hits to underground dealings, Francese was a master of his dark craft. Want to uncover more about notorious figures like him? Hit that subscribe button and dive into history's shadows with us.
You need to hear this if you're a true crime junkie. Carmine Persico, ring any bells? Carmine Persico, also known as the Snake, was a notorious American mob boss. Rising through the ranks of the Colombo crime family, he ruled with an iron fist for over 3 decades. From extortion to murder, Persico's criminal empire knew no bounds. Even from behind bars, he managed to maintain control. Are you ready to dive into the dark world of a mob hitman? Meet Nick Calabrese, a name whispered in the underbelly of Chicago. Nick wasn't just any mobster. He was a hitman for the notorious Chicago outfit. His chilling career spanned decades, involving dozens of hits, each more gruesome than the last. But what led Nick down this dark path? And how did he finally get caught? Join us as we unravel the chilling story of Nick Calabrese and his life in the shadows. If you love true crime stories, get ready to uncover the dark secrets of Frank Lucas. He was more than just a drug kingpin. Lucas built an empire by cutting out the middleman, smuggling heroin directly from Southeast Asia. His infamous blue magic turned the streets of New York into a battlefield. But how did he fall? And what was the cost?
Today, we creep into the dark side of Germany. We're talking about a guy named Nekati, Nico Arabaci. Nico, a real-life goon, was about that life. Born in Turkey, he went from nothing to one of the scariest crime bosses in all of Europe. He built his power through illegal gambling as an outlaw biker, gangster, and high-ranking member of the Hells Angels motorcycle club. In 2002, he was arrested for pimping, trafficking, assault, extortion, weapons, and racketeering. He confessed during his trial in 2004 and was sentenced to 9 years in prison. Even the toughest of goons could not touch him. But just like that, he ran away to Turkey before he got locked up. This dude was lit. You think you know crime? Think again. Meet Miguel Angel Felix Gallardo, known as El Padrino, the Godfather. Gallardo was the mastermind behind the Guadalajara cartel. He built an empire of terror, cash flow, and drugs, shaking Mexico to its core. From politicians to police, this dude was wild, and no one was beyond his reach.
He was the invisible hand behind chaos. Meet Benjamin Arellano Felix. The mastermind of the Tijuana cartel, Benjamin Arellano Felix, ruled with an iron fist. Under his reign, the cartel's power surged, leaving a trail of fear and violence. But justice caught up in 2002.
This is why you need to know Frank Rosenthal, the man behind the glitz, games, and one explosive story. Frank Rosenthal, known as Lefty, transformed Las Vegas' gambling scene in the 70s. His genius? Running 4 casinos without owning a single one. But success came with enemies. In 1982, a bomb planted under his car exploded and he miraculously survived. Rosenthal's life was a blend of brilliance and danger, a true tale of high stakes.
Arnold Rothstein, a name whispered in the dark alleys of the 1920s. Known as the Brain, Rothstein was the mastermind behind the infamous 1919 Black Sox scandal, where he allegedly rigged the World Series. But his influence didn't stop at baseball. Rothstein was a kingpin in the world of organized crime, with his hands in everything from bootlegging to gambling. His empire crumbled in 1928 when he was mysteriously murdered.
This is going to blow your mind. Gaetano Reina, the hidden force behind one of America's most infamous crime families. Born in 1889, Sicily, Gaetano Reina rose from humble beginnings to become a formidable mafia boss in New York. His reign from the late 1910s was marked by cunning alliances and ruthless control. Reina's influence spread through the underworld, yet his life ended in betrayal and a hail of bullets in 1930. His legacy, a chilling reminder of the brutal power struggles that shaped history.
If tales of cunning and power captivate you, dive into the life of Lucky Luciano, the architect of the modern mafia underworld. Born in Sicily in 1897 and moving to New York at a young age, Charles Lucky Luciano rose from a street gang member to the kingpin of the American Mafia. Luciano's genius was in organizing the chaotic underworld into a structured commission, transforming disparate gangs into a national syndicate in the 1930s. This reorganization not only intensified his power, but also instituted a new era of organized crime, one that extended its influence into legitimate industries and even politics. Despite his eventual conviction and deportation, Lucky's blueprint for organized crime endures to this day.
None were as feared in early 20th century New York as Giuseppe the Gimp Morello. Let's dive into his tale. Born in Sicily, Morello emigrated to New York, bringing with him a shadowy legacy. He earned his nickname for leaving no one unscathed. He was said to strangle men with his small, disfigured arm. He even had a small custom knife to fit his disfigured hand. As a pioneer of the mafia in America, his reign was marked by brutal enforcement and cunning schemes. Even imprisonment couldn't break his iron grip with that demon-like little arm.
Why do 90% of true crime fans know his name? Let's uncover why. Born in Sicily, Vincenzo the Tiger Terranova became one of New York's most feared mob bosses. Mastermind of the notorious Morello crime family, his reign was ruthless. Assassinations, racketeering, and a web of corruption, he did it all. The Tiger's legacy is dark, but fascinating.
Let's dive into the shadowy world of this mafia kingpin, Gaetano Badalamenti. From a small Sicilian town to the top of the mafia hierarchy, Badalamenti's rise was legendary. He headed the Sicilian Mafia Commission in the 1970s. In 1987, he was sentenced to 45 years in federal prison for being one of the leaders in the Pizza Connection, a $1.65 billion drug trafficking ring that used pizzerias as fronts to distribute heroin. The name Joseph Magliocco ring any bells? Joseph Magliocco was a shadowy mob boss in the 1960s who almost pulled off a historic coup in the mafia. He was part of the infamous commission plot that aimed to restructure the entire mob landscape.
Exposing the secrets of Frank DeCicco's dangerous life. Are you ready? Born into the underworld of New York City, Frank DeCicco climbed the ranks of the Gambino crime family. Trusted by the infamous John Gotti, DeCicco orchestrated some of the most daring hits, but in the world of organized crime, loyalty is a double-edged sword. In 1986, a car bomb meant for Gotti ended DeCicco's life instead. His death sent shockwaves through the mafia, a stark reminder that in the mob, friends and enemies often wear the same face. Frank DeCicco, a man whose life and death was marked by betrayal.
If your neighbor looks like an angel but acts like the devil, you're living next to Sam Battaglia. In the 1950s, Sam Battaglia rose through Chicago's crime ranks. Once a petty thief, he became one of the city's most feared mob bosses. Money laundering, extortion, and murder, nothing was off limits. His empire crumbled when the law finally caught up. Henry Hill wasn't just a character from a movie. He was a real-life mobster who lived in the shadows of New York. From running errands for the mob at age 11 to becoming an insider in the Lucchese crime family, Hill saw it all. His life of crime was a cocktail of danger, power, and betrayal. But it all came crashing down when he turned informant, exposing the dark secrets of the mafia. Want more stories of notorious...
You need to hear this if you're a true crime fan. The story of Simone de Cavalcante is a wild ride you won't believe. Simone de Cavalcante, known as Sam the Plumber, ruled New Jersey's crime scene in the 1960s. He led the De Cavalcante crime family, notorious for their brutal tactics and vast illegal empire. But what set Simone apart? His surprising charm and business acumen. He wasn't just a mob boss, he was a kingpin with a public persona. Yet his empire crumbled in 1969 when a massive FBI sting operation brought him down. From riches to prison, his story is a classic rise and fall.
If you love history but crave a taste of true crime, this one's for you. Meet Jack Dragna. Born in Sicily in 1891, Jack Dragna became a prominent figure in Los Angeles' underworld. By the 1930s, he was the undisputed mafia boss of LA, controlling everything from bootlegging to gambling. Dragna was known for his cunning and brutal enforcement. He played a crucial role in the infamous Murder, Inc. network. Despite his power, Dragna kept a low profile, earning the nickname the Gentleman Gangster. But his reign ended in 1956 with his death, leaving a legacy of fear and intrigue.
Are you intrigued by tales of power and terror? Then let's dive into the dark world of Vittorio Little Vic Amuso. As the notorious boss of the Lucchese crime family, Amuso reigned with an iron fist. His reign of terror in the 80s and 90s left a chilling legacy. Known for his brutal tactics, Little Vic orchestrated countless hits, instilling fear and loyalty through sheer ruthlessness. But what drove this man to such extremes? From racketeering to murder, Amuso's name became synonymous with danger. His capture in 1991 marked the end of an era, but his legend lives on.
Exposing the dark secrets of Joseph Colombo, the man who controlled the streets with an iron fist. Joseph Colombo wasn't just any mob boss. He was a master of manipulation. Founder of the Italian-American Civil Rights League, he blurred the lines between criminal and activist. But behind the facade lurked a man deeply entrenched in organized crime. From orchestrating hits to running rackets, Colombo's reach was vast and his methods ruthless. Yet he dared to challenge the FBI and even staged protests against Italian-American stereotypes. If you love true crime and mystery, then you need to know about Sam Giancana. Sam Giancana ruled Chicago's underworld with an iron fist. Linked to everything from the CIA to the Kennedy assassination, his life was a tangled web of crime and conspiracy. But why does he remain a shadowy figure in history? Why are there not more people talking about Joey Doves? This mobster's tale is straight out of a crime novel. Meet Joseph Joey Doves Ayupa, a feared Chicago mob boss. His nickname came from his love for pigeons, but it was those very birds that brought him down. In 1986, federal agents used pigeon tags to tie Joey to illegal activities. Busted by his own birds. Arrested and convicted, his reign ended.
Exposing the rise and fall of a mob legend, Paul Castellano, the Howard Hughes of the Mafia. He climbed to power in the Gambino crime family, controlling New York's underworld with sharp business acumen and ruthless tactics. But ambition has its price. In 1985, Castellano's reign ended abruptly outside a Manhattan steakhouse. Shot dead in a mob coup led by John Gotti, his downfall reshaped the Mafia's power dynamics forever.
What I wish I knew about Jimmy Fratiano instead of ignoring his dark secrets. Let's uncover the truth. Jimmy Fratiano, aka the Weasel, was one of the most feared mobsters in American history. A hitman turned informant, he exposed the Mafia's deepest secrets. From orchestrating murders to testifying against his own, Fratiano's life was a whirlwind of crime and betrayal.
Meet cockeyed Phil Lombardo. Phil Lombardo, the man who ruled the Genovese crime family. Known for his cunning and ruthless tactics, Lombardo's influence stretched far and wide. How did he rise to power? What were his darkest secrets? Subscribe for more videos. Joe Masseria, once the kingpin of New York's underworld, rose to power in the 1920s. He built an empire on gambling, extortion, and bootlegging, but his reign was marked by violence and betrayal. In 1931, Masseria's ambition caught up with him. He was assassinated in a Coney Island restaurant, betrayed by his own men. His death marked the end of an era in the Mafia's bloody history. Subscribe for
Meet
more videos.
Ignazio Lupo, the Wolf of Little Italy. Born in Sicily, this evil little greaseball brought his ruthless ways to New York from the old country. By the early 1900s, he controlled the black market, extortion, and more. Known for his cunning and brutality, Lupo was feared and revered. But his reign didn't last forever. In 1910, he was convicted of counterfeiting and sentenced to 30 years. May he rot in hell. In the shadows of New York, one name struck fear like no other: Joey Gallo. Born in Brooklyn, Joey Gallo was more than just a gangster. He was a mastermind, orchestrating hits and evading law enforcement with chilling precision. His rebellion against the Mafia's old guard made headlines. and his life was a roller coaster of violence and intrigue. But his reign ended abruptly in 1972. You need to hear this if you're a mobsters. Let's begin with the grisly tale of Sammy Gravano, the mafia's most infamous hitman. Let's dive in and explore this phenomenon. Born in Brooklyn, New York, Sammy the Bull Gravano climbed the ranks of the Gambino crime family. His journey through the underworld is nothing short of legendary. Feared for his ruthlessness, he was involved in 19 murders. His reputation as a fearsome enforcer was well earned. But in a shocking twist, Gravano turned state's witness, bringing down mafia bosses, including the infamous John Gotti. This move sent shockwaves through the criminal underworld. His testimony reshaped the mafia landscape forever. The power dynamics within organized crime were never the same. From hitman to informant, Gravano's life remains one of the most dramatic tales in organized crime history. His story is a testament to the unpredictable nature of the mafia. Before he cooperated with the FBI to put John Gotti behind bars, Gambino underboss Sammy the Bull Gravano was one of the most feared killers in mafia history. Let's unravel the dark legacy of Joseph Testa. Joseph Testa wasn't your typical mobster. He was methodical, cold and silent, earning him the nickname the Quiet Assassin. Alongside his partner, Anthony Center, they formed the feared Gemini twins. Operating under the notorious De Mio crew, Testa's precision and stealth made him a lethal enforcer in the 1980s mafia scene. Testa's calm demeanor masked a chilling brutality. He didn't just follow orders, he perfected them. This made him both respected and feared among his peers. But what drove him to such darkness? That's the mystery that true crime fans can't resist. Intrigued? Subscribe.
Why are there not more people talking about Johnny Roselli, the mob's secret weapon? Roselli, born in Italy and raised in Chicago, climbed the ranks of the mafia to become one of its most influential figures. Known for his charm and cunning, he orchestrated some of the mob's most notorious schemes, including plots to assassinate Fidel Castro. But Roselli's life took a dark turn. In 1976, his body was found stuffed in an oil drum, floating off the coast of Miami. Was it revenge?
If your enemy is Al Capone, you're probably Jaime Weiss, the fearless gangster. Born in 1898, Weiss was Chicago's real-life boogeyman. Known for his ice-cold stare and relentless pursuit of power, he even scared the infamous Capone. From fierce shootouts to cunning heists, Weiss left an indelible mark on the underworld. But his reign was short-lived.
Mo Dalitz, the elusive crime boss, transformed Las Vegas from a dusty desert town into a glittering oasis. From bootlegging during Prohibition to building iconic casinos, Dalitz's influence was everywhere. But beneath the glitz and glamour lurked a shadowy world of organized crime. What secrets did he take to his grave?
None knew his name, but everyone feared his reach. Russell Bufalino. Russell Bufalino wasn't your typical flashy gangster. Known as the Quiet Don, he operated in the shadows, controlling the underworld with a calm but iron fist. His influence stretched from New York to Hollywood, and even the infamous Teamsters Union. Bufalino orchestrated some of the most significant mob activities of the 20th century. But how did he remain so elusive? That's the secret of his power. Intrigued?
Carlos Leda, co-founder of the Medellin cartel, transformed Norman's Cay into a notorious hub for drug trafficking. This tiny island in the Bahamas became the epicenter of Leda's multi-billion-dollar cocaine operation. Leda's rise was meteoric, fueled by a mix of charisma and ruthlessness. He even idolized Adolf Hitler and painted swastikas on his planes. In 1987, after years of evading capture, Leda was extradited to the United States. He was sentenced to life plus 135 years, but later cooperated with authorities, reducing his sentence. I bet you didn't know the DEA's most wanted man is still out there. Rafael Caro Quintero, the mastermind behind one of the deadliest drug cartels in history. Infamous for his role in the kidnapping and murder of DEA agent Kiki Camarena. Captured, then released, and now a ghost on the run. Want more on notorious figures like Rafael? Subscribe for
Salvatore
more.
Maranzano, a name that once struck fear and now echoes through history. Salvatore Maranzano rose to power in the 1930s, uniting New York's mafia under his iron fist. He was ruthless, strategic, and ambitious, but his reign was short-lived. Rivals plotted his downfall, and in 1931 they struck. Maranzano was betrayed and murdered.
Why are there not more people talking about Vito Genovese? This mob boss's story is one for the ages. Vito Genovese was the kingpin of the Genovese crime family. Born in Italy, he moved to New York and climbed the ranks of the mafia. By the 1950s, he controlled a vast empire of crime, from narcotics to murder. But power can be fleeting. In 1959, he was convicted on drug charges thanks to the testimony of a fellow mobster. Sentenced to 15 years in prison, Genovese died behind bars, a fallen titan of organized crime. His rise was meteoric, but his fall was even more dramatic. That's the story of Vito Genovese, a name that still echoes in the annals of true
Why are there not more people talking about Carlo Gambino? This mob boss ruled New York's underworld. Born in Sicily, Gambino immigrated to the US in 1921. By the 1950s, he'd climbed to the top of the Gambino crime family. His secret? Ruthless efficiency and a low profile. Unlike flashy rivals, Gambino avoided the spotlight, making his empire nearly untouchable. Even the FBI struggled to pin him down. Want more?
In the shadows of organized crime, one man pulled the strings of the mob's money, Meyer Lansky. Lansky wasn't your typical gangster. He didn't wield a gun but a ledger. Born in Poland, he migrated to the US and became the brain behind the mob's finances. Casinos, bootlegging and money laundering, Lansky did it all. He was never convicted of serious crimes, yet his legacy as the mob's financial genius endures. Welcome to Notorious Figures in History. Meet Carl Civella, the leader of the Kansas City crime family. Following the death of his brother, longtime crime boss Nicholas Civella, Civella ran Kansas City's underworld with iron fists and blood-stained hands. He wasn't just some street thug with a bunch of goomers. Civella was a real-life mob boss and goon. You could find him killing it with the butterfly collars and cheap perfume, orchestrating hits, shaking down casinos and corrupting weak politicians. He ordered violence like most people order takeout. Fast, ruthless, and with zero remorse. The FBI finally caught this fool slipping in a massive wiretap. He sang like a canary, a real Fonzanoon move exposing the Midwest mob's darkest secrets.
If you don't like sugar-coated stories but love true crime, then this one's for you. Meet Salvatore Riina. Salvatore Riina, also known as the Beast, was the deadliest mafia boss ever. Leading the Sicilian mafia during the 80s and 90s, he orchestrated over 1,000 murders. Judges, police officers, even innocent civilians, no one was safe from his wrath. Riina's reign ended in 1993 when he was finally captured, but his legacy of fear and brutality remains unparalleled. Imagine living in a world where one man held that much power. Want to dive deeper into the lives of notorious figures like Riina?
None can hide forever, especially not Matteo Messina Denaro, the ghost of the Sicilian mafia. Matteo Messina Denaro, a name that struck fear across Italy. From the shadows, he orchestrated countless crimes, including bombings and murders. His infamous signature? A ruthless smile. Despite being Italy's most wanted man, he slipped through the fingers of law enforcement for 3 decades, until he was finally captured. What's something people don't know about Richard Kuklinski? He wasn't just a hitman, he was a chilling executioner known as the Iceman. With over 100 confirmed kills, Kuklinski's methods were brutal and varied: poison guns, even a cyanide-laced hamburger. His chilling nickname? It came from freezing his victims to mask their time of death. This wasn't just crime, it was cold, calculated terror. None could match the cold-blooded efficiency of Roy DeMeo. He was the mafia's favorite psychopath. Roy DeMeo was no ordinary mobster. Known for his brutal efficiency, DeMeo led the infamous DeMeo crew, responsible for over 100 grisly murders. His method, the Gemini method, a chilling, systematic process to eliminate enemies without a trace. But even the most ruthless enforcers faced their downfall. Paranoid and hunted, DeMeo met a violent end, betrayed by his own. Roy DeMeo's reign of terror left a bloody mark on mafia history.
Mysterious tone. Waxy Gordon, a name lost in the pages of time. Or was it? Born Irving Wexler in 1888, Gordon was a master of deception and a millionaire bootlegger. Operating during the Prohibition era, he was the silent partner to notorious mobsters like Arnold Rothstein. Waxy made his fortune by flooding the streets with illegal alcohol, but he was no ordinary gangster. He kept a low profile, avoiding the limelight, which made him a ghost in the annals of crime history. But his downfall came when the IRS caught up with him on tax evasion charges in 1933. Convicted and forgotten, the hidden tycoon faded into obscurity. Want more
All right,
tales?
true crime fans, let's dive into the shadowy world of Johnny Dio, the mastermind you never knew. Johnny Dio, born Giovanni Ignazio Dio Guardi, was the king of the labor racketeers. In the 1950s and 60s, he orchestrated numerous schemes from behind the scenes, manipulating unions and business deals with a cunning unseen by most. Dio was the puppeteer pulling the strings, ensuring the mafia's iron grip on New York City's industries. But he wasn't just about money. He was a mentor to future infamous figures like Tony Ducks Corallo. Many feared him, yet few knew his name. That's the hidden legacy of Johnny Dio. Intrigued?
Asaro, a name that sends chills down the spine of criminologists everywhere. Vincent Asaro was more than just a mobster. He was allegedly the mastermind behind the 1978 Lufthansa heist at JFK Airport. Imagine $5 million in cash and $875,000 in jewels vanished without a trace. Asaro was connected to the infamous Bonanno crime family, a network of underworld figures that ruled New York's criminal landscape. For decades, Asaro managed to evade justice until his arrest in 2014. But despite the testimonies and evidence, he was acquitted in 2015, leaving many to wonder, did he really get away with it?
I bet you didn't know one of the most ruthless mobsters lived right here in America. Meet Tommy the Butcher Pitera. Tommy Pitera wasn't just a mobster, he was an artist of death. With a black belt in karate and a mind for murder, he became one of the mafia's most feared enforcers. Known for his brutal, almost surgical methods, he left a trail of bodies that baffled even seasoned detectives. His chilling nickname, the Butcher. But how did he get caught? And what made him so terrifying? Find out more about the dark world of Tommy Pitera. Subscribe for more stories.
What I wish I knew about Whitey Bulger instead of everything else. Ready for the shocking truth? Whitey Bulger wasn't just a crime boss, he was a master manipulator. From orchestrating murders to running a massive extortion racket, he did it all. But here's the twist. He was an FBI informant, double-crossing his own. Imagine the man behind the scenes, pulling strings on both sides. The FBI's most wanted, yet protected by the very system hunting him. His reign of terror lasted decades until his dramatic capture in 2011, and the ending brutal. He met his demise in prison.
Welcome back to Notorious Figures in History. Tonight, Pete the Pick Lafrosia, the Gambino family's forgotten soldier. You know the bosses, Gotti, Castellano, but underneath them, an unseen engine of earners and enforcers ran the business, their names hid in files and surveillance stills. One of those names, Pete Lafrosia, known inside the mob simply as the Pick. He was both a master thief and a trusted killer. Member of the DeMeo crew under Roy DeMeo, described by NYPD as the best auto thief ever. He stole cars with surgical precision, supplying an international racket. The Empire Boulevard operation shipped hundreds of stolen cars overseas, Kuwait, Puerto Rico, turning theft into big business. This is the world where Lafrosia learned his craft, a brutal, efficient coalition of thieves and killers. What follows is a look at a criminal craft turned into an empire, and how one man's skill became indispensable to a violent crew. Pete the Pick, a nickname earned, not assigned. His talent was technical: locks, ignitions, early car alarms, treated like a surgeon treats instruments. NYPD investigators later called him the best auto thief they'd seen. He rarely left a trace. No broken glass, no smashed locks, only vanished cars. When a luxury sedan disappeared without evidence, detectives whispered his name. Month after month he delivered, and the profits flowed. Empire Boulevard became the logistical heart. Warehouses, chop shops, export crates. VINs were altered, paperwork forged. Cars acquired legitimate identities before shipment. Then they shipped them overseas. The FBI would later call the racket colossal. Specific makes and models were targeted. High-end buyers overseas paid handsomely. Reports say active partners earned roughly $30,000 a week each at peak. For Lafrosia, this system was his domain. Procure, prep, ship. He could also be unexpectedly human. A story he tells about being mistaken for a drug supplier in Florida once earned laughs and $2,000. A quirky aside in a life of danger, and a reminder these men lived ordinary moments amid the extraordinary. But the job always pulled him back to precision and profit. Scale brought attention. Federal agents watched ports, warehouses and shipping manifests. The same revenue that enriched the crew would later be the thread investigators pulled to unravel them. Roy DeMeo led a tightly knit faction within the Gambino family, earners and killers in one unit. They operated with autonomy, a group prosecutors later described as extraordinarily violent. The Gemini Lounge served as their hub, a place where deals were made and often lives ended. Among the most dangerous were the Gemini twins, Joseph Testa and Anthony Center, Henry Borelli, cold and ruthless, central to the crew's wet work, and Anthony Center, a close friend of Lafrosia's, bonded by shared work and trust. Lafrosia wore two hats, master procurer of cars and a trusted participant in murder assignments. He was linked to several murders, including cases from the late 1970s. The crew's method was clinical: lure, kill and dispose. Fountain Avenue became notorious as their graveyard. Most crucial, absolute silence. Omerta was their law. That silence brought trust and protection, even when bodies stacked up. Lafrosia would come to be respected for never talking, even when offered deals. Above them sat Paul Castellano, a businessman who liked revenue and hated publicity. Nino Gaggi, DeMeo's direct superior. The crew answered upward when needed. Castellano tolerated the DeMeo violence because the cash flowed into Gambino coffers. But autonomy bred paranoia, internal checks, fear of loose tongues, and brutal enforcement. Connections tightened as indictments and deaths removed key players. By the early 1980s, federal investigations closed in on the DeMeo crew. Roy DeMeo himself would be murdered in 1983, likely on orders from above. Core members, Borelli, Center, Testa, and Pete Lafrosia, were swept into indictments. Lafrosia faced a stark choice: cooperate with the government or serve hard time. Federal offers of witness protection and new identities were likely on the table. He refused. He honored omerta over freedom. Convicted and sentenced, Lafrosia served 26 years behind bars. A quarter-century of silence, watching associates die, cooperate, or rot away. Many of his peers would never walk free again. When he walked out, the world had changed. New media, new questions. Lafrosia has appeared in YouTube interviews, speaking matter-of-factly but avoiding explicit admissions. He offers anecdote and context about Roy DeMeo, Anthony Center, and life in the crew, without naming crimes. There are reports a television series based on his life is in development. If produced, the story will bind his name to more famous bosses: Castellano, Gaggi, and the Empire Boulevard operation. His legacy is conflicted: a master criminal who enabled terror and a man who never snitched. The bodies, the cash, the exported cars, all pieces of a brutal ecosystem. Pete the Pick Lafrosia remains an enigmatic figure, practical, loyal, and lethal.
Welcome back to Notorious Figures in History. Let's peel back the curtain on the history of the Mafia, and I promise, what you think you know is only the tip of the iceberg. Today I'm diving into 5 dark secrets you never knew about the early Mafia. Some of these will change the way you think about organized crime and maybe even about your neighborhood barber. First up, did you know the very first American Mafia boss may have been a barber? That's right. Giuseppe the Gimp Morello, one of the earliest known bosses, this evil little man was feared by many. The Gimp ran a modest barber shop in New York by day and a sinister counterfeiting ring by night. Imagine getting a shave and a haircut from this sinister dwarf who at the time was considered the most feared man in Little Italy. Rest in peace, bro, but stay there, seriously. Now, let's talk lemons. Now, listen up, jabronis. You might picture the Mafia dealing in bootleg booze or gambling. But in the 1800s, the real money was in citrus. It was like modern-day crack. Early Sicilian mafiosi built their first empire by controlling the lemon trade in Palermo. Lemons were a luxury, prized for fighting scurvy and fetching sky-high prices. The Mafia's first monopoly wasn't on crime, but on fruit. Here's a twist you never saw coming. The word mafia itself didn't even start as a criminal term. In Sicily, mafia was slang for swagger, boldness, and pride. Only later did it become synonymous with blood oaths, secret societies, and ruthless power. But the darkness crept in early. Before the mafia was even organized, mobsters were already using terror as a tool. Enter the Black Hand, an extortion racket where handwritten threats, sometimes with crude drawings of knives or coffins, were delivered to immigrants. Pay up or else. These tactics terrified entire communities long before Hollywood ever imagined it. And then, there's the gruesome barrel murders. In the early 1900s, New York City was rocked by a string of killings where the victims were stuffed into barrels and left in plain sight. It sent a message. The mafia wasn't just ruthless, they were creative in their warnings. So, next time you walk past a citrus stand or sit in a barber's chair, pay respect to the Goomba generals who came before and ask yourself, what secrets might be lurking beneath the surface? Which of these dark secrets shocked you most? Do you think the mafia's roots in everyday businesses made them more dangerous or just harder to catch? If you're hungry for more real stories about notorious figures in history, don't be a Fonzanoon. Make sure you like and subscribe. And if you want to support the channel and become a Goomba General, check out our Notorious clothing line by clicking the link at the bottom left of your screen. Chindon.